encouraging, inspiring, and empowering mothers on their parenting journey. Welcome to the OHbaby podcast. Being a mum can be overwhelming and unrelenting, we know. Each episode, we'll be bringing you the top tips, advice, and words of wisdom from experts and industry leaders to help you navigate your own path. It's the information you can trust. Mama, you got this.
Hello and welcome to the OHbaby podcast. I'm Angela Pedersen, founder of OHbaby and mum of 3, and really excited about the year ahead and this podcast. We did take a bit of a gap in between our last one and the holidays and, with the holidays and stuff, but we're back and new year ahead with a great season, summer season of podcasts coming up. If you have topics that you're interested in us talking about and interviewing our experts on, then please send us a DM through our Instagram page, that's at OHbaby Magazine, or email us info@ohbaby.co.nz. Just a quick note to say that our summer issue is in stores now and available to buy online. This issue has just so much goodness in it. I absolutely love it. We have, like in the pregnancy section, we have, so much good stuff. An article on the silly, like the holiday season swaps. So, it's what to eat during pregnancy, the things you can't eat, but what you can swap it out for. So instead of soft cheese, use aged cheddar. Instead of cocktails, mocktails. So looking at all of those kind of alternatives that mean that you don't necessarily have to miss out entirely when you're pregnant. Getting yourself, your mind and your body ready for birth. Raising resilient kids, baby wearing options, gorgeous maternity and kids fashion, ditching the day sleep. That's a hot topic. That was one that I really missed. Raising resilient kids, I've already said that. Anyway, so parties, food, fashion, kids' rooms, recipes, it's all in there. And this issue, you also get a free calendar, 2023 calendar from Rosine. It's got these gorgeous local picks, like prints for the summer and just gorgeous stuff. But you can also, once, that month's been and gone, I love this one, it's Piha. Once the month's been and gone, you can rip it off and pop it in an A4 frame and pop it on the wall, which is great. That's in stores, online, and free calendar. So get it now. So on to our podcast. Today we have the wonderful Gina Urich. Gina is a mum of 4 and a clinical nutritionist based in Hawke's Bay. Gina's been in work in private practice now for 10 years, specialising in women's health, hormones, fertility, pregnancy and postpartum, and also infant nutrition. After the birth of her 4th baby, go you, she developed a baby food brand Nourish, which is sold through Australia and New Zealand. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. What an intro.
Wow, it's very impressive, especially being a mum of 4 and starting your own business and starting a baby food range and working with mums and bubs with your own private practice as well. That's amazing. Go you.
Thank you.
I feel that. So tell me more about you.
Where do I start? So I started my career straight out of school, went into nursing, and that was in Perth in Australia, and then worked in maternity and women's health, gynae oncology wards in the hospital, between nursing and pathology in South Brisbane at the Mater Mothers Hospital. And it was probably during that time that I felt a real calling to learn a lot more about preventative medicine. And I just I guess what we were serving mums with gestational diabetes in hospital didn't really align with my values. So I felt like I had to learn a lot more. And I went and did a Bachelor of Health Science and Nutritional Medicine in Australia. And it was during that time in the student clinics where I just felt a real passion for women's health and was probably living and breathing it myself as well. My journey through motherhood and being a working mum, kind of experiencing the same things as a lot of my clients. So I learned a lot about health for myself and then was able to put that into practice for my clients. And I've been working in private practice for the last 10 years, really specializing in women's health conditions, which naturally leads into infant nutrition because a lot of the time we're supporting women through pregnancy and having babies. And then after the birth of my fourth baby, Billy, I actually thought I was going to have some downtime and have a bit of a break. And she was a really great sleeper, which I'd never experienced before. And I thought, this is a little bit boring. I might write a book. So I started writing a little ebook on starting solids, and that really took off. And I saw a real interest for parents looking for information on what to feed their babies kind of outside that mainstream recommendation. And then this kind of just really opened up a can of worms for me. Parents were really looking for ingredients or foods to feed their baby, but were also kind of going back to work in that postpartum period as well and a little bit time poor. So I started looking into commercial baby food and what was available and felt that we could do something a little bit better in the commercial baby food space in terms of convenience and nutrition. So, and Nourish was born out of that. So it's been quite a ride, quite a journey, but loving every minute of it as well.
Wow, so good. That's amazing. So good. And when you're really passionate about something, it shows in, the brand and the product, but also just helps to drive you in, what you're doing as well. It's like that, your why is just so good.
Absolutely. It almost doesn't feel like work when you're really passionate about something and you feel motivated and driven. And Nourish has always been a kind of purpose-led brand that we can provide something really good. And that's been the driver behind it. So yeah, it has been fun.
Yeah, so good. So good. Yeah. So starting solids, hot topic. It's always a hot topic. Shall we start from the beginning? When do we start? What are the signs? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when we look at babies, there really isn't a magic number or age to say start feeding your baby at this particular date or at this age, because babies are all so different. So I really encourage parents to lean into their baby's developmental cues. So your baby will really show you when they're ready. And if it's at 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, it doesn't matter. Your baby will really show you. So probably the first cue that you'll notice with little ones is that they will start showing an interest in food. They'll be looking at you eating and leaning forward, opening their mouth, and it's really cute. And you want to give them food straight away because they look like they're absolutely itching to eat food. But that's not the standalone cue. That's probably one of the first things we see. And then second to that is that babies start sitting up unassisted. So this means that they've got that core strength. They're able to move food through the digestive tract. And then also they've got that core strength and head strength to be able to sit up and reduce or mitigate that risk of choking as well. So that's really important to make sure that your baby can sit up in a high chair so that they can eat. Another one is making sure that they've lost a tongue thrust reflex. So if you put a bit of food into a baby's mouth, they'll naturally push it out. And we're born with this mechanism as a choking mechanism so that we don't choke on things, which is really clever of us. And babies naturally lose that tongue thrust reflex around the same stage that we're ready to start eating. So popping a little bit of puree in your baby's mouth and watching if they pop it back out or if they actually start chewing it will tell you if they're ready for solids as well. And then just remembering that it is new to them. So if they are going to put something in their mouth and pull a funny face or that it's a different texture that they've not experienced before, just really understanding that this is a new thing that they're learning how to do and really leaning into their cues and what they're telling us.
Yeah, that's so good. Actually, I have flashbacks to Yeah, just that testing of when they're ready and the spitting out. Now I can totally picture that. Like, no, not ready. Okay, I'll wait a bit. I always had in my mind, I think it's like the WHO code are just like, or are all about 6 months plus, like 6 months plus. And so, as soon as they turn 6 months, that's when I was suggesting it. But so many of my friends, due to milk supply or just really hungry babies, they were starting earlier. But that kind of is the that makes sense in terms of sitting up and the diaphragm, and that's interesting. So I've learned something new today.
Oh, good. And I think sometimes, like when babies aren't sleeping through the night and parents are thinking, oh, they must be waking up hungry, introducing food could actually add another dimension of them not sleeping as well. If that's a new thing for them to be able to digest and process food, or there's something else going on, then we're masking that. So I think really looking for those developmental signs is telling us that our babies are developmentally ready to start digesting food. That's the biggest thing, that their gut and all the enzymes in their stomach are actually at the stage where they can start breaking down different proteins and carbohydrates and fats and things like that too. So I really encourage parents not to go too soon and to really wait until they're showing all those signs.
So from when they begin at the sort of that 6 months-ish sort of age range, what are the essential nutrients that a baby needs from then on?
And I think this is probably where that kind of 6 month mark comes into play, because we know from around 6 months babies start losing their iron stores. So that's probably why we lead into that 6 month mark. But it is naturally that 6 month mark when they start showing those developmental cues, but then also those iron stores start declining as well. So iron, first and foremost, would be one of those essential nutrients that you really want to focus on. And looking at how much iron a baby actually needs is actually incredible. It's a lot of iron. So a baby needs 11 milligrams of iron opposed to an adult male who needs 8. So if we think about the portion size that a little baby would be eating, like 1 or 2 teaspoons at a meal compared to a piece of steak that dad might be eating, it's a big difference in their portion size, but actually a big difference in the amount of nutrients they need as well. So in saying that, really leaning into those nutrient-dense foods that are easily for a baby to digest and absorb, and also containing really concentrated forms of iron as well. And then we can also do things like pairing foods. So having an iron-rich food like liver or beef or chicken, or if you're a vegetarian, some of those lentils and pulses and things like that, but pairing it with vitamin C-rich foods, which really helps at absorption as well. So all those synergistic nutrients.
So how do you get 11 milligrams of iron into a couple of teaspoons? What sort of foods are going into there? It's meats, but is that pureed because they don't have teeth, they can't chew on this? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so we can use puree. So those really easily digested forms of iron is in our heme iron. So that's in meat sources and animal products. So liver, gram for gram, is one of the most nutrient dense foods on the planet. We know that liver has lots of nutrients and is easy for a baby to digest. And then things like your red meats and poultry, like chicken thighs and things like that, is also really easy for a baby to digest. And then pairing it, as I said, with those vitamin C rich foods is going to help the absorption of that iron. If we're looking at a vegetarian or a plant-based family, then it is a little bit harder to get those nutrients in, and the preparation of those ingredients is going to really help. So soaking your lentils and pulses to kind of break down that phytic acid and make it more accessible or more digestible for babies is going to really help as well. And then again, pairing it with those vitamin C rich foods.
So those are kind of like, these are first foods to begin with.
Absolutely. Yeah. We tend to think about fruit as a first food, but I really think that we need to focus on those nutrients or those ingredients that contain those nutrients like iron and all the other essential nutrients that babies need. And meat is actually really easy for a form of food for a baby to digest, and it's non-allergenic as well. So it's a great first food. It can often be a little bit scary and parents worry about choking and things like that, but it is actually a fabulous first food to feed babies.
Wow, that's interesting. I can't think of anything worse than liver, but if they haven't tried anything, then they've got nothing to compare it to. If you haven't given them this sweet, delicious fruit yet, then.
And that probably, like, if we think about around 5 to 6, 7 months, there's this flavor window, is a window of opportunity where you can really train your baby's palate to be open to different flavors as well. And so if we're just feeding our babies kind of plain, bland or sweet foods, then they're going to be really driven to favor those kind of foods in the future as well. So offering a really diverse palate from the get-go, whether it be liver or salty, sour, spicy foods like that, that's going to really help your baby to have a diverse palate and be open to different flavors.
Oh, can we expand this topic? So tell me about the flavor window. What sort of, like what type of flavors, like?
So if breast milk's naturally sweet, and babies naturally have a sweet palate and they will favor sweet food. So if we go straight into feeding sweet purees of like pureed apple and pear and mashed banana and things like that, then they're going to be more driven or more favorable to have sweet foods. If we're starting to offer foods like salty, whether it be in like olives or capers or spicy things like a little bit of spice, a little bit of ginger, those kind of foods, sour like lemons, grapefruit, bitter like your leafy greens, asparagus, all those kind of vegetables that have different flavors, then they're going to be more open. And when we can really get this flavor window between the time that they start introducing food, that kind of first 2 months of introducing solids, they are going to be more open to having a diverse palate. And you just keep offering these foods on repeat, they're going to be more willing to eat these foods later in life. And you kind of avoid that fussy toddler stage that we probably all know too well.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking right now is I mean, I remember making my own baby food for a while and pureeing everything and being so motivated and putting them in, the freezer and little, ice cube size things. And my daughter hated it. I was like, I put in all this effort and you're eating fruit purees all the time, or I think I got like porridges and bits and bobs, which wasn't too bad. Or like a carrot mixed with some apple pure, like it was just all the sweet ones. And so, raising what could have been, what was with my second and third kind of fussy eaters. My first, she's good. And even now she's pretty good, but into fussy toddler. Only wanting the sweet things. So being more.
And when we look at a lot of commercial food that we see on our supermarket shelves, they do have a lot of fruit-based products, or even the rice cereal that's fortified with synthetic iron. We know that rice is a really hard grain for babies to digest, but then the synthetic iron they put into that as well. What we see in our clinic is really constipated babies, or lots of gastrointestinal upsets, because one, it's a really hard grain for them to digest, but then that synthetic iron is also really constipating, can make it really hard for them to digest as well and be quite aggravating. So when we're pairing like these synthetic fortified foods in bland rice or in sweet fruit purees, we're missing out on a lot of those essential nutrients, which could then create a lot of gastrointestinal upset as well, which we really don't want to see in little ones. And that's when we see some of those sleep patterns happening outside of that, because we like the gastrointestinal system is a little bit aggravated. So I think when we can really lean into those whole foods and those really nutrient dense whole foods, we can support the digestion of those nutrients, but then also supporting our babies' developing digestive system as well, because it is immature, it is just developing, and they are having these foods for the first time. So we want to make sure that they're in a form that it is easy for them to digest and not causing any upset.
Yeah, that's interesting. So interesting. And so, I mean, gosh, it does flow on to sort of everything, doesn't it, really? And I've heard it said that, our gut health, how it affects, our moods, our, energy levels, it's, the way we think. How do we set our little ones' gut health up for thriving?
Yeah, so as I just mentioned, really leaning into those whole foods, which is going to be easy for them to digest, and then just really concentrating on some of those essential nutrients. So outside of iron, we've also got all those healthy fats. So things like avocado, olive oil, ghee, butter, coconuts, nuts and seeds, they're all beautiful, nourishing fats that's going to support their gut integrity. But then also, when we think about the development that's happening in those first 2 years of life, a little baby is literally going from rolling to running and then babbling to talking, and that's huge development that's dependent on nutrients from our food, and specifically fat. Like, we think about the amount of fat that's in our brains and how reliant we are on this in our dietary, as a dietary source, to really support this extreme developmental phase. So really leaning into those nutrient dense high fat foods as well is great. And then when we're looking at the gut, things like bone broth is fabulous. So bone broth has all those amino acids that help seal that gut integrity. When we're born, we have what's called a leaky gut, and that's so that all those beautiful immunoglobulins and antibodies and all that, those beautiful nutrients in breast milk can easily pass into the bloodstream, and we can easily absorb those nutrients. But as we start introducing solids, those gap junctions in the stomach start to close up a bit, and that stops us from getting food intolerances, and things like bone broth really help seal that gut as well. So bone broth is a fabulous addition to starting solids. And then also looking at probiotic rich foods, so things like kefir or your sauerkrauts, or using a probiotic capsule and mixing it into purees and things like that. That's also another great way to support that microbiome. And we know that microbiome has that flow-on effect to our immune health and our mental health and all those things as well. So it can feel like a really overwhelming and big topic, but just to simplify it and pull back a little bit, I think making your baby a whole foods baby is probably the easiest way to look at it, and to really just look at those nutrient dense whole foods, and then kind of steering clear of any of those synthetic vitamins or things with preservatives and additives in there.
Yeah. It's so interesting, because it kind of goes opposite to what we have been raised in terms of, our food habits and that kind of thing. I actually not last year, the year before, started on the keto diet, and I knew I couldn't do it on my own, and I'd totally fail. So I had a keto coach, and she talked me through, here I am, like, eating no fat this and no fat that, and all of that kind of stuff. And she's like, you have to change your mindset on fats, because
Absolutely.
healthy fats are incredibly important. And so, getting rid of the canola oils and the sunflower oils and all of those,
Yes.
and your olive oil, your avocado, your butter, and ghee.
Yeah.
And for me, like, even just like eating fats and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose weight, was just so like, this is just, it still takes a mind shift, eh? Like, I'm just like, well,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's been great. It's been great and life changing in so many ways. My clarity of mind is better. I've got lots of energy, and I just think, gosh, if I had started my kids off with that, not keto, but
High fat,
eating whole foods, good fats, what a better start that would have been not that nothing is unchangeable, if we've got into those bad habits, we can get out of them and start it. There is a bit of a rough patch at the beginning, the getting
We
used
all
to
do, yeah.
and changing.
Yeah. And I think to always remember that we always do the best with what we know at the time. Like I think back to like my oldest is 15 and I didn't know these things 15 years ago, but and I look back and think, oh, I would have done things differently back then, but we absolutely do the best with what we know. And if you're listening to this thinking, oh, I didn't do that and I wish I had, or don't beat yourself up or be hard, because I think it's just we grow as we learn, and we keep adapting to those new learnings as well.
It's so true. That's absolutely true. And being kind to ourselves and not beating ourselves up is very important. So yes, don't anyone feel guilty based on what I've just said. And I've got a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 13-year-old now, and my journey has inspired them, and what I learn I pass on, and they know better now, and I think it's in that learning that they get to learn and take what I've learned on with them and on their journey and on their eating, because they control what they put in their mouths ultimately in the end, from now on. Not that they make great choices all the time still, but they're inspired, but yeah, starting off well is so good. One thing I wanted to ask was, which we may have kind of gone past, but I'll bring it back up, was the difference between spoon fed and baby led weaning. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so this comes up a lot. We get this question often, and it's good to kind of unpack it, because there's definitely no right way to feed your baby and no wrong way as well. And I think, again, following your baby's cues, every baby is so different, and what one baby does, another baby may not. And I can see that with my 4 children, they've all done things so differently. So spoon feeding obviously is feeding your baby with a spoon, and baby-led weaning is when you offer finger foods and baby can feed themselves. Or you can do a combination of both and spoon feed your baby and then also let them feed themselves as well. And they do both have their pros and cons. So spoon feeding, from the research that's been done, has said that babies do get more nutrients from spoon feeding because they are getting more in their mouth. But baby-led weaning offers that developmental milestones as well, so that they're learning that pincer grip and they're learning how to take food to their mouth and eat themselves as well, which is really important. So if you are watching your baby and they're really fussy at the spoon and they're not wanting to eat, and then you give them, just put it on their high chair tray, and then they just love feeding themselves, then definitely lean into that as well and let them go for it. And there's lots of different safe ways of letting your babies eat foods like meat as well as a baby-led weaning method. If you were to slow cook your meat or make it soft enough that they can break it up, or even mince and things like that, they can definitely still use baby-led weaning methods, and then also safely without the fear of choking as well. One thing that we do suggest is, if you do make up a puree, or even with some of the Nourish purees, and they do like to feed themselves, is that you can load the spoon for them. So you put the puree on the spoon and then they can feed themselves, or you can put it into one of those little silicone feeders and they can suck it out as well, which is really great. Or then even using it as a dip. So you can have some veggie sticks and your little puree as a dip. Kids love to dip for some reason, and they can dip it in and suck it off a carrot stick or a piece of celery or something like that. But there's many ways to kind of combine the two, and I think just really following your baby's cues and seeing what they prefer.
Yeah. I think I started spoon, and then eventually they were kind of just going for the spoon themselves, like, give that to me.
Yeah.
I've got this, I've got this all over my face, but and everywhere else, but
I know. And it's normally just to pop them in the bath at the end because it's such a messy process, but it's so good to let them get messy and to explore the textures and rubbing it on their face and things like that too. So yeah, if you're a type A parent like me and you're like, oh, don't make a mess, I think the easiest thing is to just chuck them in the bath at the end.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh, we've got so many photos of just, orange faces or beetroot all over faces, and They're
Cute.
just the best.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So I'm just trying to think, is there anything else I've missed? What to look for in sort of, what we're seeing in the supermarket. What do we look out for? What are the best things we can get? What are some things to avoid? Tell me about that.
We kind of touched on this a little bit. So I think looking at the ingredients first and foremost, turn that packet over and have a look on there, because the front can be a little bit greenwashed or misleading, and it can be an overwhelming space in the baby food aisle when you've got organic or natural or all these things jumping out at you. So definitely turn the packet over and have a look at the ingredients first and foremost, and look to see if those ingredients are providing some of those essential nutrients. If we're seeing a fruit puree with apple and pear, or even pumpkin and carrot, we know that there's not going to be any iron in there, or it's not got those essential fats as well. So having a look at those nutrients or those ingredients is important. And I'm not opposed to fruit or vegetables, but on their own, they're just not providing that iron or those fats as well. So making sure that they're providing those nutrients. Looking for sugar to be under 6 grams per serve is really important. And even if we don't see sugar as an added ingredient, fruit concentrate can add a massive load of sugar to your baby's diet. And as I was starting to look into commercial baby foods, I noticed that some of the baby foods have around 16 to 20 grams of sugar per serve. And if babies are being fed these multiple times a day, it's a big lot of sugar each day for a little baby to consume. So having a look at that sugar content and looking for products that aren't based on fruit alone, making sure there's some other ingredients in there. And then trying to lean away from synthetic vitamins as well. We know that they're really hard for babies to digest. So those kind of fortified products can be really difficult to digest. And then also keeping away from those preservatives and additives. And sometimes this might look like rosemary extract or even citric acid, which isn't from an orange. So, or any kind of numbers or additives on the back of the packaging as well. So just steering away from those, and especially while babies are so little and their little bodies are so susceptible to these kind of ingredients that they don't really need. Be savvy of that packaging, flick it over and look at the back.
So if you were to do it all over again, your baby is coming up to that, first food milestone, what would the first meal be that you'd prepare?
First and foremost, just a couple of single ingredients. So if I was just to fork mash a little bit of avocado, or fork mash a little bit of pumpkin or something like that. And then even like you just mentioned before, adding liver sounds really yucky, but what we can do is you can get frozen liver and you can literally just grate it and then mix it into some cooked pumpkin or some cooked vegetable, and it literally dissolves in there. So the actual process of cooking that meat isn't too difficult as well. So once they've tolerated some single ingredients like avocado or a bit of vegetable or a bit of meat or something like that, then you can start combining all those nutrients, all those ingredients.
Genius. It's like hiding your veggies and stuff.
I know. Hiding the liver.
I wonder if my kids would know now if I had some liver in their meals.
Well, I hide a lot of liver in my kids' meals, actually. And that was kind of, which was inspired a lot of the Nourish products. So the Nourish purees are a freeze-dried puree, and you mix the powder with water and it reconstitutes back to its whole food form. And we've got bone broth and liver and vegetables and things like that in there. But one of the other products is a meal booster, and I've got a really fussy kid that doesn't like dinner too much and has a few mouthfuls and he's done. So the meal booster has liver in it, and it's got bone broth and some veggies and things like that. So you can really kind of pimp up that dinner and make it really nutrient dense without having to process all that or cut up all those really tiny bits of liver or food and veggies and things like that too.
So good. And you know what? It sounds like that would actually benefit me for my lunch meal or something,
Yeah.
The bone broth is also great for collagen,
Yeah.
we're all about that at my age.
Yes, me
Not
too.
the collagen. I'm good for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, so good. Hey, it's been awesome speaking to you. At the end of each session, we ask this question. Now let me just suss that one up. What is one thing that you swore you would never do before you were a parent that you did?
That I do now.
Yeah. Or that you do,
Let me have a think. I'm not too sure. I think I probably, maybe it's the screen time. Maybe I thought that my kids would be on less screens, but sometimes it's like a little babysitter where I need to get something done. And yeah, I think even going out in public and having a coffee with a friend and having a phone there sometimes is just a 15-minute lifesaver.
Yeah. I hear you. I think that's very common. That is not the first time I've heard that one.
Oh, good. I love it.
Okay. I did share last time that my first child may or may not have had a slightly American accent for a while based on the amount of screen time she was having. So we reduced that pretty quickly when people are like, oh, have you been to America? Well, as lovely as America is, no, we've been to Disney Channel.
Yeah, Isla was actually very similar with Peppa Pig and had quite an English accent for a little while. And I was like, well, that's a good sign that there's been enough of Peppa Pig.
Yes. Read the signs. Enough for screen time. Yeah. So good. Oh, well, it's been great to chat to you. And we're keen to, catch up again on other topics with you. So if anyone listening is wanting to talk about, women's hormonal health and nutrition or, other things around, your fussy eaters and there's probably a whole nother topic actually. That's a whole nother podcast. Email us info@ohbaby.co.nz, DM us on our Insta page at OHbaby magazine, and we'll bring Gina back and ask the questions. So it's so good to have you, and thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, take care. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the OHbaby podcast. If you've found this episode useful and encouraging, make sure to share it with your village so that more mothers can feel empowered. Head to ohbaby.co.nz for more from us, and don't forget to subscribe. Mama, you got this. Till next time.